Hi all, AD here from Hans & Johns. As always, thank you so much for clicking on the video. I'm in deepest, darkest Belgium, Flanders to be exact, and we're on our way to Ypres, and we're going to go and see the Hooge Crater Museum, and then if we've got enough time, we're also going to try and get into the In Flanders Museum as well, which it's only about 10 minutes up the road before we head back to the Eurotunnel and to go home. Really looking forward to this. I'm hoping in the spring to do a longer tour of the battlefields, but that's all that we've got time for today. So yeah, let's go and have a look around. Interesting little chapel. Okay, look at them. Looks like it was founded in 1994. We're going to head into the museum now. This is the cafe section. It's got loads of lovely photographs all around, and also you'll see up on the shelves around the top there's loads of shells that the soldiers polished up and engraved. There's quite a few hundred here. I wouldn't fancy the job of having to clean all those. What a nightmare that would be. Now today's video is going to be in 3 sections. The museum here, then we're going to head next door to where the crater and the trenches are, and then we'll be heading over to the military cemetery. If you are sensitive or you get triggered fairly easily, just want to give you a heads up, there are some graphic pictures here, so I mean there's nothing too horrific, but if you are a sensitive type you might get triggered by it, so I'm just giving you the opportunity now to not watch the rest of the video. Anyway, I do hope you enjoy, and thanks for watching. And like I said, I'm just giving you a very brief overview because there's so much here. There's just no way I could talk about everything. But inside the museum, visitors can find a huge collection of original artefacts that have been recovered from the surrounding battlefield. These will include uniforms, there's helmets, weapons, ammunition, and there's also everyday items such as eating utensils, personal letters and equipment used in the trenches. Now together these objects help illustrate the daily reality of life for soldiers that were stationed here. The museum also explains how Hooge became strategically important during the war. Its elevated ground made it valuable for observation and defence, which meant it changed hands multiple times between opposing forces, and as a result the area was subjected to intense shelling, mining and close quarters fighting. I thought this was lovely, the cap badges, because a lot of people don't realise that they recruited a lot of Irish men into the First World War, and that I was just pointing out the Royal Dublin Fusiliers, and I have a connection. My great uncle fought in the First World War here on the Western Front, and he got gassed by the Germans. Now he did survive, but that's a whole other story that I'll go into some other time. Now the museum is housed in the former school and the chapel, and that was actually built after the First World War, and it was built by a local lord, forgive me I can't remember his name, but he wanted to rebuild his estate, and obviously to get the workers to come he needed housing for them and schools and places for them to worship. So he built that, and I think it's very fitting that it's now been turned into a museum. And you can see the map of the area, and it illustrates just how massive this battlefield actually was. Inside the museum I found loads of collections of original artefacts. I say they are privately owned, and I think most of them have been recovered from the surrounding battlefield. These included uniforms, helmets, weapons, ammunition, and there was everyday items as well, such as eating utensils, personal letters and equipment used in the trenches. And together these objects really helped illustrate the daily reality of life for the soldiers down in the trenches. There was also a display of items for Christmas, because there was that very famous football match, wasn't there, on Christmas Day. So yeah, loads of displays, say far too much to unpack into one video. The museum also explains how Hooge became strategically important during the war. It's on elevated ground, and that made it really valuable for observation and defence. And this meant that it changed hands multiple times between opposing forces. And as a result, the area was subjected to intense shelling, mining and close quarters fighting. I was just saying to my husband here, that jacket must have been so heavy. So it was a special jacket for the British to transport 4.5-inch shells. And this was really fascinating for me, a little bit creepy, don't you think? But because I say I've got a family connection, because my Irish uncle fought for the British, so he might have used some of this equipment. And this was an exploded gas shell. Absolutely fascinating. We were in here for such a long time, and I feel like we only just scratched the surface. But some of the photographs and maps that were displayed throughout the museum show how the landscape has changed over time. So before the war, this area was largely farmland, but during the conflict it was transformed into a heavily fortified battlefield, and it's now marked by trenches, craters and destroyed buildings, although the buildings have obviously been cleared. But the museum helps visitors understand how modern day Hooge still bears traces of this destruction just beneath the surface. Personal stories also play an important role in the museum's displays. There's accounts from soldiers describing the conditions in the trenches, including the mud, the cold, the lack of sleep and the constant danger they were in from artillery fire and gas attacks. They also had different displays of different countries, and you can see that poor horse there. They had French, German, Canadian and all the equipment. So these first-hand perspectives really helped, for me anyway, humanise the conflict, and they remind us that the war was experienced by individuals and not just armies from different countries. So by the time you leave the museum, I really felt I had a clearer understanding of why Hooge was so fiercely contested and why its surrounding sites remain important today as places of remembrance. Like I say, I'm not an expert on anything. I know little to nothing. I just take you out on my jaunts and just share with you what I find as I'm going around. And here's another display from 1916. And that was a French soldier. So there's 5,916 graves just across the road, and there's a drawing. So there's probably, they reckon, more than 5,916 souls buried there, because you'll see when we go over there, there are sometimes 2, 3, 4 soldiers in each grave. And I'm just going to forewarn you, there's some graphic photographs coming up, so if you're sensitive, look away now. And literally next door to the museum is the Frontline Hooge Open Air Museum, and it's a World War I site. And you just have to pay like €1, which is quite extraordinary, and that's all you need to pay to go in. So the Hooge Crater is one of the most striking physical reminders of the fighting that took place here. It was created by a large underground mine that detonated during the First World War. And I found it really incredible that there were so many shells and shrapnel just lying around the site. And I just went down for a quick look into this bunker, and it was so cramped and you had to really duck down while inside, and it was really a stark reminder of how miserable life must have been. I mean, it was bad enough you're fighting a war, but the conditions were just horrific. The cold, the mud, the damp, it must have been absolutely awful. Those poor men. Mining warfare was a common tactic on the Western Front, especially in areas where opposing trench lines were close together. Soldiers dug tunnels beneath enemy positions, packing them with explosives in an attempt to destroy their fortifications. And they created openings then for them to attack. So when these mines were detonated, they produced enormous craters, instantly killing those nearby and drastically reshaping the landscape. And this lake is what's called the Hooge Crater, and it is particularly notable for its size and preservation. The blast that created it threw vast amounts of earth into the air, leaving behind a deep, wide depression that remains visible today. So standing at the edge of the crater gives you a powerful sense of the scale of the explosion and the violence involved in this form of warfare. On the 19th of July 1915, the British tried to eliminate this fortified German position, and it resulted in a mine explosion prepared by the Royal Engineers Specialist Tunnelling Companies. The result was a deep crater, which is now known as Hooge Crater. Now, it's hard to kind of find out exactly how many died, because there was such fierce battles here from many different sides, but it is noted that the Durham Light Infantry suffered heavy losses in the explosion. 60 were killed and 330 wounded because the Germans attacked them with flamethrowers. And also, that being said, obviously hundreds of German soldiers died on that day as well. Surrounding the crater are preserved trench systems, and these trenches illustrate how soldiers lived and fought on the front line. Trenches were typically arranged in a complex network, including frontline trenches, support trenches and communication trenches. This system allowed troops, supplies and information to move along the line while offering some protection, very little though, from enemy fire. The trenches around here show how carefully they were constructed. They were often reinforced with sandbags, wooden support and corrugated iron, which you can still see. But despite these efforts, conditions were extremely harsh. Heavy rain could flood the trenches, turning them into mud-filled channels. And in winter, freezing temperatures added to the misery, while in summer, disease and insects were common problems. But from these trenches, soldiers faced constant danger. Artillery bombardments could begin without warning. Snipers posed a continuous threat. Periods of relative quiet were often followed by sudden, intense fighting. So the final part of today's video is Hooge Military Cemetery, a place of remembrance and reflection. The cemetery contains the graves of soldiers who lost their lives in the fighting around Hooge and the surrounding area. Most of the headstones belong to soldiers of the Commonwealth forces, and I think maybe there'd been a school visit and the kids left something here. Each grave marks an individual life, often with limited information, a name, a rank, a regiment and a date of death. In some cases, the identity of the soldiers is unknown, and the headstone just bears a simple inscription acknowledging an unnamed fallen soldier. There's one there to the right, but this one just caught my eye because it's my great uncle's regiment, and you can see to the left there a soldier of the Great War. The layout of the cemetery is formal. It's very carefully maintained, reflecting the principles established by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. The uniform headstones emphasise equality in death, regardless of your rank or background. Many graves are aligned in neat rows facing a central cross of sacrifice, a symbol commonly found in Commonwealth military cemeteries. Together, the museum, the crater and the trenches, and now the military cemetery really do tell a complete story of the area during the First World War, from historical context and personal experiences to physical evidence of the battle and finally remembrance of the fallen. Each site, I feel, really contributes to a deeper understanding of what happened here. These locations help ensure that the events of the past are not forgotten and continued to be remembered and respected. If you are ever in Belgium, it's definitely worth coming by. And just want to add to that we will be doing some more of the battlefields and exploring a little bit more in Flanders later on this year in the spring. I'm going to wrap the video up here. I do hope you enjoyed it. It was really humbling, as it always is. We haven't got time, unfortunately, to go to in Flanders today because we spent such a long time looking in the museum, and we probably could have spent another couple of hours easily, couldn't we, in there? Such an interesting collection, and it's private as well. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy today's video, if you could please like and subscribe, I really would appreciate it. It really does help my channel out, and there's a hype button down below. And if you do want to support the channel further, you can use the Buy Me a Coffee, because I always make a contribution to all the places that I visit, because I think it's really, really important that we do as much as we can to keep this history alive and relevant for the next generation. So anyway, thanks again, and I'll see you for the next one.